The streets of New York City never truly sleep, but at 3 a.m, they whisper instead of shout. A tall figure moved through the shadows of Fifth Avenue, his long dark hair tucked beneath a black fedora hat. He wore sunglasses despite the darkness, and his red leather jacket caught the occasional streetlight like a flame in the night. This was his favorite time to walk, when the world belonged to insomniacs, dreamers, and those running from their own fame. He had left his hotel suite unable to sleep, haunted by melodies that wouldn't leave his mind and thoughts that wouldn't give him peace. The concrete beneath his feet felt real in a way that stages and recording studios sometimes didn't. Here, in the anonymous darkness, he could just be a man walking, thinking, breathing. He turned onto a quieter side street, away from the main avenue. The buildings here were older, their facades weathered by decades of rain and snow. Steam rose from a subway grate, creating an ethereal fog that swirled around his ankles. That's when he noticed the figure huddled in a doorway, a bundle of ragged blankets that might have been mistaken for discarded trash, if not for the weathered hand that extended from within. The man in the doorway was elderly, his face a map of hard years and harder choices. His eyes, though tired, held a clarity that surprised the stranger in the fedora. Most people walked past this corner without a second glance, but something made him stop. Perhaps it was the way the old man sat with dignity, despite his circumstances, or maybe it was the harmonica that rested beside him on a tattered cloth. "Spare some change?" the old man asked, his voice rough but not demanding. There was no desperation in his tone, just a simple question posed to a stranger in the night. The man in the fedora stopped walking. He tilted his head, studying the elderly figure with an intensity that made the old man shift uncomfortably. "What's your name?" the stranger asked, his voice soft and melodic, with an unexpected gentleness. "People call me Samuel," the old man replied, surprised by the question. Most people either ignored him completely or threw coins without making eye contact. This was different. "Samuel," the stranger repeated as if tasting the name. "Do you play?" He gestured toward the harmonica. Samuel's eyes lit up for the first time. "Used to play in clubs back in the day, jazz mostly. That was before." He trailed off, the sentence hanging unfinished in the cold air. The stranger sat down beside Samuel, right there on the cold pavement. Samuel stared at him in disbelief. The man's expensive jacket would surely get dirty, yet he sat without hesitation, as if the doorway of a forgotten building was the most natural place in the world to rest. "Tell me about the music," the stranger said, pulling his knees up and wrapping his arms around them like a child listening to a bedtime story. Samuel couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him about his past, about the man he used to be before life had stripped away everything but memories. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like water breaking through a dam. He spoke of smoky jazz clubs in Harlem, of nights when his harmonica could make people cry or dance or fall in love. He spoke of a wife who had loved his music, of dreams that had seemed so close he could taste them. "Why did you stop?" the stranger asked gently. Samuel's hands trembled as he picked up the harmonica. "Life happened. Lost my wife to cancer, lost my job, lost my apartment. Funny how everything can disappear so quickly, like smoke." He looked at the instrument in his hands. "This is all I have left of those days." The stranger was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of understanding that surprised Samuel. "Music doesn't leave us, Samuel. Even when everything else does, it stays here." He touched his chest. "And here," he touched his temple. "You do talk like someone who knows," Samuel observed, studying the stranger's profile. There was something familiar about him, but in the darkness and behind those sunglasses, Samuel couldn't quite place it. "I do know," the stranger replied. "Music saved my life more times than I can count. When the world got too heavy, when people expected too much, when I forgot who I was, music reminded me." "Would you play something for me?" the stranger asked. Samuel hesitated. "It's 3 a.m. People are sleeping." The stranger smiled, a flash of white teeth in the darkness. "The right people will hear it. The ones who need to." Samuel brought the harmonica to his lips. His fingers were stiff from the cold, and he wasn't sure if he could still make the instrument sing the way he once had. But as he blew the first note, something magical happened. The music flowed from him like it had never left. A slow and mournful blues that spoke of loss and longing, but also of resilience and hope. The stranger closed his eyes and swayed gently to the melody. His fingers tapped a rhythm on his knees, and Samuel could see that this man understood music in his bones. When the song ended, the stranger opened his eyes, and even in the darkness, Samuel could see they were glistening. "That was beautiful," the stranger said, his voice thick with emotion. "You haven't lost it, Samuel. Not at all." "Feels good to play for someone who actually listens," Samuel admitted. "Most people look through me like I'm invisible. Or they look at me with pity, which is somehow worse." The stranger nodded slowly. "I understand that more than you know. Being seen but not really seen. Being famous but feeling invisible where it matters." He caught himself, as if he'd said too much. Samuel studied him more carefully now. The expensive clothes, the way he carried himself, the understanding of music that went beyond casual appreciation. "You're someone, aren't you? Someone important?" The stranger laughed softly. "I'm just a man who can't sleep, talking to another man who makes beautiful music. Does it matter who I am?" "I suppose not," Samuel agreed. "The night doesn't care about fame or fortune. Out here, we're all just souls trying to make it till morning." The stranger reached into his jacket pocket. Samuel tensed, expecting money, already preparing his dignity for the transaction. But instead of cash, the stranger pulled out a small notebook and a pen. He wrote something quickly, tore out the page, and folded it carefully. "Samuel, I want you to have this," he said, pressing the paper into the old man's hand, along with something else, a card of some kind. "Tomorrow morning, go to this address. It's a recording studio. Give them this card and tell them you're expected. They'll help you record your music properly." Samuel stared at the items in his hand, confused. "I don't understand. Why would you, would you?" "Because talent deserves to be heard," the stranger interrupted gently. "Because you played music tonight that moved my soul. Because everyone deserves a second chance to share their gift with the world." He stood up, brushing off his jacket. "The world needs your music, Samuel, more than you know." Samuel looked at the address on the paper. It was a prestigious studio in Midtown, a place he'd only read about in music magazines years ago. "They'll never let someone like me through the door." "They will," the stranger assured him with absolute certainty. "Trust me. Go tomorrow, 10 in the morning. Don't be late." He started to walk away, then turned back. "And Samuel, don't stop playing. The world has enough silence already. The world has enough silence already." "Wait," Samuel called out. "At least tell me your name, so I know who to thank." The stranger paused under a streetlight, his long hair catching the amber glow beneath his hat. He smiled, a mysterious expression that held both sadness and joy. "Just call me a fellow musician who recognized a kindred spirit. That's all that matters." He walked away into the mist, his red jacket disappearing into the shadows like a flame being extinguished. Samuel sat there holding the paper and card, wondering if the entire encounter had been a dream born of cold and loneliness. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Samuel still sat in his doorway, clutching the paper and card. Other early morning pedestrians began to appear on the streets, workers heading to opening shifts, joggers starting their day. Most walked past without noticing him, but Samuel didn't mind. His thoughts were elsewhere. He looked at his harmonica, then at the address on the paper. Could he really walk into a prestigious recording studio? Did he dare to hope that this wasn't some cruel joke? But something about the stranger's sincerity, the way he had listened to the music with such genuine emotion, made Samuel believe. At 9:30, Samuel gathered his belongings. He found a public restroom and cleaned himself up as best he could. At exactly 10 o'clock, he stood in front of the recording studio, his heart pounding. The card the stranger had given him simply had a single word embossed in gold: believe. He walked through the doors. The receptionist looked up, and before Samuel could speak, she smiled warmly. "You must be Samuel. We've been expecting you. Welcome to your recording session." As Samuel followed her down the hallway, He understood that the stranger in the fedora had given him more than just an opportunity. He had given him back his dignity, his purpose, and proof that in the darkest hours, kindness can light the way to dawn. That afternoon, Samuel's harmonica sang through professional microphones, his blues filling the studio with raw emotion and hard-won wisdom. And somewhere in the city, a man in a fedora smiled, knowing that music had once again done what it does best, connected two souls and reminded them both why life is worth living.